Alright, so today we're going to be doing a lab entitled How to Stack Up. You have lab sheets in front of you. You will not have homework. We do need to get majority of this done, and then we return back to class together. You will be finishing the rest of it. But the sheets that you have in front of you looks like this. No one needs to move because we're not going to be doing instruction entirely from here. You're going to be actually working on this on your own, or with your face partner or your shoulder partner, or if you're in a group. If you don't have one, I'll get you one in 1 second. But I want to go over some of this so that you know exactly what you're doing. First of all, with you and your partner, before you get started, the first thing you're going to do before you start handling anything, you will read these instructions here, or this information. Notice they have blanks, so therefore what? You got to answer them. Fill in the blanks. Your objective for this lab is to make a model of a geologic column. You're going to interpret the geologic history represented by the geologic column that you have created. That's what we've been studying. That's the purpose for what we have been studying. We do understand from our notes that small columns come from all around the world. Those small columns then get together to make longer columns, and longer columns eventually having the entire geologic column. Is that understood? Yes. Obviously, you will not have an entire geologic column because we haven't been all around the world. This is a lab setting, so what you will have will represent stratigraphic pieces from around the world and then the entire geologic column. Is that understood?
Yes.
All right. Your materials. You have four stratigraphic columns, which is your second page like this. This paper does not have holes in it because you're going to be cutting things out of here. Also, with that being said, this is listed as the back of your paper, which is why your holes are on the other side. The question side is going to be your front of your paper, where you're going to have all your answers and things of that nature. But we are looking on this side where you have your instructions. You'll need color pencils or crayons. You all have a bag. This clears up. You all have a bag at your desk. If you don't have one, I'll make sure you get one that either has color pencils or crayons. If you have your own colored pencils, that's fine. Now, what I've noticed with some of you students is you think your crayons have to be perfectly sharpened or they have to be perfectly together. It has to be a whole crayon. For this, it does not, because we're not coloring pictures. We're just coloring columns to represent different columns. So they don't have to be a perfect crayon. It doesn't even have to be a whole crayon. It can be a piece of crayon. So even if you want to break a crayon in half so you and your partner could share it because you all have to share the crayons that are in there, I am perfectly fine with that. Do you understand?
Yeah.
Okay. You'll need scissors. They're at your lab station, and then you will need tape. Tape is going to be on my station up front because you will not take all the tape with you. You will take bits and pieces as you need them. Looking at your procedures, it's going to be telling you to color your stratigraphic pieces. You need to make sure that you read your procedures before doing anything. How many... What are you doing with those scissors? Where should they be? How many of you have ever followed directions, not just in school, maybe you were making a cake or putting together a video game or a toy or something like that, and you got through the instructions and you got messed up because you started just doing stuff and you realized, oh, dang it, and now it's too late to go back. So therefore, you need to make sure that you read these instructions. Read the instructions first, then go back and read them and follow them. Do not just jump ahead and do everything, because if you do, once you get started, if you mess up, it's too late to go back. Make sure you follow those instructions. You understand that? Every color that you need for coloring is in your bag. Again, if you want to break the crayon and share, because we do need to move that part along, you may do so. What you must complete today in class, you must get all the way up to number 13 needs to be complete. That is not saying 13 only involves you putting together your geologic column, which then you're going to be taping here, which your instructions tell you. If you get to the questions today, great. If you don't, that's not a problem, but you do have to get your geologic column all complete today. Jamil, stop tossing that. Any questions about that? No. Okay. Then the other thing that I want to say to you is when you are coloring, some of you have a habit of trying to be neat freaks. It is perfectly fine that you want everything to be neat. That's fine. However, when you are coloring these, you don't have to be as neat as you feel like you need to be because, number one, you're going to be cutting it out. So if you go out the lines, that's fine. You do not have to color around fossils. Color right over them. So I'm going to just show you a quick example of what I mean. If you look at your procedures and you look at number 1, it says color the oldest layer pink in my stratigraphic column 1. Someone raise your hand and tell me which one is the oldest layer. Simon. This is column 1. Which one is the oldest layer? How can we identify it, Aaron? And what kind of fossils does it have? Look on yours. You have it in front of you too. What kind of fossils does it have? Hearts and X's. All right? So when it says color it pink, there I am. I'm done. That took me less than 5 seconds. You do not need to be taking a lot of time on this. Got that? All right. Now, when it says color things certain colors, if it says pink in another area, make sure you color it with the same pink that you use, which you should be doing because you have those in your bag. If it says green in one area and it says green in another, make sure you color it with the same green. The other thing is, excuse me, there is an instance where it says light blue and dark blue. Dark blue does not mean just take the blue and color really darkly over your fossils because you must be able to see these fossils. It just means color it lightly with the dark blue crayon and then you have a light blue one in there and color it with that. Does that understood? Yes. All right, at some point, I am going to be stopping you all when we get to the portion where we're starting to put this together because I'm going to get a lot of questions from you on how do we do this? How is this? And I don't want to answer that question a million times. I'm going to answer it one time. So I'm going to set my timer. And when I stop the timer, I'm going to come back and have you come together to give you a little bit of an explanation on how we do that. Is that understood? Okay, any questions? All right, again, you're working with your group, that's your face partner or your shoulder partner, and you may go ahead and get to work. Okay, so now you're at the point, once you're finished coloring all of your stratigraphic layers, you are now at the point of number 2 where it says carefully cut the stratigraphic columns 1 and 2. So I'm going to do that really quickly. I just want you all paying attention so that when you get to this point, if you're not already there, you're knowing what you're doing. Notice I am cutting only the layers. I am not cutting the words at the bottom telling me that they are stratigraphic columns 1 and 2. I know that they are stratigraphic columns 1 and 2 because that's what my procedure told me to cut. Do not go ahead and cut the other ones out yet because then you will confuse yourself and you will mess up. You have to cut them out at the time that I tell you to cut them out. So I'm going to cut these 2 layers and then I'm going to follow directions on what it tells me to do. Alright, so now I have these 2 layers here. This is 1, this is 2. Then on my procedures, it then tells me lay the individual columns next to each other on your desk. It says find columns that have the same rocks and contain the same fossils. Move each column up and down to line up similar columns next to each other. So if I look here, I see, okay, this heart doesn't match across, but look at, I got brown and I got X fossils, I got yellow X fossils and blue fossils, okay? Then our procedure says, if an unconformity or a wavy line exists and it appears in a stratigraphic layer or column, there may be rock layers missing. How do rock layers become missing? Nope. Drew? No. Non-deposition and erosion. Considering the fact that this rock layer here, has a rock layer and there's unconformity, what type of unconformity is this? Erosion. Not non-deposition because the rock layer is there. So, something was eroded in this layer. So it says, if that occurs, you may need to examine other stratigraphic column 2 to find out what fits between the column above and below the unconformity. Cut the layer along the unconformity and line up with the matching layer. So therefore, I'm going to take this. There is an unconformity here. So I'm going to need to cut along the unconformity, my wavy line. And remember, you cannot flip rock layers. That's flipping the earth upside down. You can't do that. So I got my layer like this. And I'm still going to match it up and say, okay, this goes here. And this still goes there. This just shows me that in this time period, some of rock layer brown got eroded. And then it tells me, for number 5, overlap matching layers and tape the columns together, turning one short column into a longer column. So now I can take this, and I can put this here, and I can take this, and I can place this here. And then I would take a piece of tape. Madison, give me some of that tape. Then I would take a piece of tape and I would take my layer going from a small column to a longer column. Then your next step tells you that you're going to carefully cut out stratigraphic column 3. Once you do that, you're going to lay it alongside next to stratigraphic, lay the longer column you created next to stratigraphic 3. So I'm going to take this, lay it next to 3, and I'm going to refollow steps 4 through 5 and putting them together. If any unconformity, which this does have one, exists, I need to cut that, and I do the same thing all the way through till I've completed all 4 layers. And that will take you up to 13 and having your entire geologic column. Any questions on that? Okay. Okay, then you're good.